Okay, welcome everyone to AAC in the Cloud 2024, brought to you by Cough Drop AAC. I'm so excited to welcome Kelly Fonner and Donna McNear with their presentation titled Sorting Through Tactiles for Literacy and Communication. What are they and how do you use them? Welcome, Kelly and Donna.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. We're really excited to be here. We'll introduce ourselves and then we'll steal the screen. Donna, you want to start?
Sure. So I'm Donna McNear. I'm in Cambridge, Minnesota, and my career has been teaching children who are blind and visually impaired and a consultant. I'm also an orientation and mobility specialist and have been working with kids and training and stuff for a really long time now.
And I'm Kelly Fonner. My background is as a special education teacher. I've taught from early childhood through transition. I became an assistive technology specialist early along the way and have worked in the area of augmentative and alternative communication, computer access, literacy. And in my path, I have had this great opportunity to collaborate with Donna McNair. And Donna, while I'm getting the slides up, I think you do a nice job about telling people about how our work comes together from different
Right.
fields.
So just as a reminder, Kelly, I kind of have those bullets in a slide.
Okay, I'll be coming up.
Yeah, so why don't you do that? Because then that'll help me.
All right, so here's our session. Here's the information on us.
And it's, I'll just jump into this, Kelly, and then the next one is about us. So sorting through tactiles, we wanted to start by letting you know what our key ideas are, what we're going to be talking about in the next hour. So Kelly and I feel that tactiles in general with students is an underused medium. And so we like to talk about it from our different perspectives and encourage people to embrace it and consider it for more students. So the information we've pulled together in this session, it's designed for all team members. So not just for teachers who teach kids who are blind, or not just educators who are working with kids with AAC or AT people. It's for all team members. And so our ideas are about getting started, getting into the tactile learning medium. And so what Kelly and I like to do is blend our collective knowledge and experiences. So for Kelly, that comes from assistive technology, and like she said, her background with teaching in AAC. And for me, it's from teaching in the area of visual impairments. So then we kind of talk about all kids. So sorting through tactiles for literacy communication, we like to think about it as turning on touch thinking, just like having that brain really engage with right, with what your finger is touching. And so we simplify this learning for you by just putting it into three areas. First, understanding what we're talking about and what we mean through tactiles, exploring tactiles, and then using and implementing tactiles. So that's how we frame what we're going to share with you. So we like to start with getting on the same page with terms we use and words. So definition for tactiles. And this is great information for you because then you can use this information in your work with your team members and sharing with others. So it's simply materials perceived by the sense of touch. It's tangible. So in disability related contexts, we think of tactiles as items using touch for teaching and learning. And so in the area of visual impairments, we call it the tactile learning channel. And so I think that's just a great term and a great reference. to think about using tactile materials. It's that tactile learning channel. And so examples of that we think most commonly about in terms of tactiles is tangible symbols, which that definition is three-dimensional objects used as symbols to convey meaning. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Braille too. And Braille is a system of raised dots enabling reading and writing through touch. And in this photo, we have a little friend who I know and his mom. He's visually impaired, and he's a tactile learner with a little bit of vision. And his mom made these cards when he was a preschooler, all tactile for him. And plus there's the visual component too, because he did use the visual learning channel. And so it's just a great example. I just love, he's enthusiastic, he's touching it, he's smiling and having a great time.
I think it's a really great example of an adapted Candyland game, right? So those are the cards for you, people probably recognize them, and how we are looking at all materials, and whether you're at home, as this picture obviously is at home, or you're at school, or you're in the community. The other thing with the Tactiles is that they are both receptive and expressively used. And so we're going to be talking about that.
Thank you, Kelly. So it's important to understand who benefits from using tactiles. So we think about students with visual impairment, that's kind of obvious, but we also think about kids with neurologic diversity benefiting from using tactiles, and then students with complex communication. And this is a photo of a former student of mine, and it's just an example of the benefit of having that tactile experience. And she's blind, but not just always using representations of an item, but whenever you have a moment where you can do something real and do a real tactile experience. And this is just an example of getting to touch a newborn baby. Happened to be my first grandchild. So we like to understand our roles in tactiles because we think about it as, well, it's just for Donna because she's a teacher of blind, visually impaired. And so we want to expand that concept of roles using tactiles. So we think about combining, collaborating, and around decision making to support a variety of students. So to expand your idea of flexibility about who can be knowledgeable about the tactile learning channel. So we're thinking about assistive technology specialists, teachers for students with visual impairments, speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, and physical therapists is who we were primarily thinking about, but it's really all team members.
And as Donna says, it is all team members. There are people in our various fields that specialize in the area of talking about tactiles or tangibles, but everybody has something to contribute to this process. One of the things in the field of assistive technology that we talk about is feature matching, because we're going to be talking about different types of tactiles, different purposes for those tactiles. And so one of the things that Donna and I have put together as a part of our bringing understanding together is this chart that you see on the right, and that will be in your handouts. So it's the features of tactiles, and the features are in different groupings: the purpose, the selection method, the level of the technology, the visual appearance, because that is often a part of it, the type of tactile, what it represents, the physical properties of that tactile, and if there's any auditory component. And you see three visual representations of the picture on the top is an image of tactiles from the sidewalk, from a walking area, to convey meaning of boundaries and pass-throughs. The second picture is the finger on Braille. And as Donna said, we're going to be talking about Braille. The third image is a 3D printed images from the core project. So that core words project that talks about tactile representations of core words. And we'll be giving you more references to those. So we're going to be looking at the idea of overall access. What are those things that are add to the sensory input for our tasks? We're going to be looking at things that are tactile markers and guides. So things that might be about physical access to where you're going, but also tactiles that may be on the surface of a product that you're using. Of course, we're going to be talking about manipulatives. In the area of literacy, Donna's going to be talking about Braille and tactile symbols. I'm going to be adding to that tactile objects, images, and tactile graphics so that we have all reading material represented. And then also looking at written communication. And then, of course, the area of expressive communication with tactile and tangible symbols and tactile and manual sign language. So there's a lot to this area once you really start to dig in. You know, we look at the properties, so we'll go into each of these area components of feature matching, where in some tactiles, it is a tangible object that is a miniature, as you see here in these representations of animals and objects that might be a part of songs, where they are little miniature representations. But sometimes we'll see people use parts to a whole. Rather than having a miniature toilet, I might have the flush handle and use that as the tactile. And we'll be giving you more examples. You'll see that the tactile on top of the parts of speech, it might show you what it's on top of might represent, whether it's a verb or a noun. You might see the shape of the card that it is on. It might be the texture that represents if it's an action word or a descriptive word. The other thing is that sometimes it's hard to see in this picture. Maybe if you look up at the upper right where it says choo-choo, you can see that there is a Braille label across the words choo-choo. So that often including Braille so that a child or the individual has easy access to it. And it will make a difference of whether you're putting that on the top of a card, on the bottom of a card, based upon not visual presentation, but tactual access to that Braille. Donna's got some other things to consider.
Yeah, so a part of using the tactile learning channel is just really thinking about multisensory and adding in that tactile to manipulatives. And these are actually photos from a friend of mine who's a private speech clinician who has clients who are young children who are visually impaired. So she just really became competent at adding tactile components to items she was using with all clients. So some considerations to think about in terms of manipulatives and making it multisensory is just thinking about toys and their tactileness and thinking about that when you go to use or buy toys, and that concept of tactileness and how you can add to it, or maybe something already has it. And then, of course, smelly books and stickers, using the sense of smell for that multisensory component. And then noise-activated toys, adding to the tactileness with noise. And then toys that wiggle and shake, and things that move, and then including movement activities as a way of having that multisensory experience. So broadening your thinking in terms of that multisensory along with the tactile learning channel.
And just in case you didn't notice, that picture on the upper right, when Donna was talking about adding to the tactileness of toys, essentially there are four-legged, zoo animals, wild animals in that picture. But so if you were to close your eyes and touch them, you're really just feeling a body and maybe some difference in ears and the four legs. And some children don't have enough awareness tactily to be able to maybe size out those ears, size out the length of the snout. But by adding to it, where you see the cotton that's added to the bear, the kind of strip of leather that's added to the back of the elephant, things that enhance the stripes on the zebra. So you have those examples of moving forward and really adding to the tactileness of those toys.
So thinking about literacy, we're going to share with you this little video clip that has to expand our thinking about using objects with books in the whole realm of promoting emergent literacy. And so I'm going to talk later on in our presentation a little bit more about using real objects. In this video, you're going to see it's using representations of real things. And so this is a video of a young boy with his mom in his home, and he's visually impaired. He's a tactile learner. And this book that we're going to look at is what I call a refreshable book. So it's a Velcro book where we have themed objects that we use in the book, so that it's refreshable, because then we use the Velcro to change out the book. And this happens to be the theme in this book that the mom is using with her son is transportation items. So you're going to hear a voice in the background. That's his older brother. And it's just a great little example of the tactile learning channel and using it for literacy.
Vroom, vroom. What goes vroom, vroom? Car. Go up. Okay. What's next? What goes? Helicopter. Helicopter. Oh, you want to open? Okay. What's next? Doot, doot. Boat. Boat. You go in the water with the boat. Yeah. Boat. Boat, right. Boat. Close the book. You want to start over? Or do you start over? Open the page. There we go. Vroom, vroom. What goes vroom, vroom? Remember? Car. Yeah. Helicopter. Up. You want to open the pages?
After you guys are done tonight.
What's that? What's on the last page? You want the car? Get the pages. That's all right. That's you. Yes. Boat. What's this? Boat. Toot toot. Toot toot.
Spider monkey. Pens. Spider monkey.
Car. You close it. You close it. You put the flap down. No, you want to open it again?
Oh.
Oh, what do we do? You just want to turn pages?
Up.
Up. All done. Want to start over? Nope.
So every time I watch this, I see Kelly smiling, I get a big smile. It's just a great example that there's such a high level of engagement here with so many emergent concepts for books and literacy. And obviously this was designed for somebody who is visually impaired in mind, but you can really see how you can expand this concept to kids with neurodiversity and how they may benefit from this kind of learning experience around a book, and kids with communication challenges who need a lot of hands-on experiences to help them with beginning literacy concepts. Kelly, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, as you said, I think it's a really great example, and what I really love about it is that if you listen to this and watch what the young child is doing with the book, this is very similar to what kids who are fully sighted are doing with books. They're starting back and forth. It's not really about reading every page. They want to go back to the beginning. They want to do the same book over and over again. So we see those same literacy concepts using tactile representations as we do with visual representations. And that just, I think, is just a wonderful part of the experience.
Okay, so we just got through talking about what we need to understand about using tactiles, and now we're going to just do some exploration to help you with ideas and get you thinking about all kids. So I said I was going to talk a little bit more about tactiles and representations and that concept of achieving meaning. Because when we consider, for example, this tangible symbol of a duck, how is this a duck, right? How does this become a duck to a child, especially a child who's blind or many other children, and yet we're calling it a duck and it's just a plastic molded shape. But we know through teaching experience and in our fields know through all these years we've been using tactile symbols that with use and exploring different ways of conveying meaning, kids make sense of it and get meaning from it. So I think about, using representations versus real objects. I mean, we want to use real things, real experiences to get that experiential learning, but we can't always do that. A blind child can't touch a cloud. And there's many concepts in our world that we teach and that sighted kids see in storybooks, or kids who I'm going to leave that thought alone and go someplace else. But it's that understanding that it's not necessarily a hierarchy of knowledge and skills. So if you think back to the little boy looking at the refreshable book, he didn't have to have experience with a helicopter in that refreshable book to pretend with and learn and use the concept of helicopter in that book. And then it's that thought, is representation, is it less than in our teaching? And I think it just is how we use the item, how we engage with it, the frequency, how we attach meaning to it, and associate it with activities and other concepts. So to think about that concept, and then that idea of abstract to concrete. So, literacy is abstract concepts. Print is an abstract concept. Yet it becomes concrete in our learning. All those print symbols, we learn to read. So if we use all those concepts and be flexible and be creative, I think we can get beyond getting hung up on using representations and knowing if we use effective instruction, kids will gain meaning. Before I move on, Kelly, is there anything you want to add to that whole meaning thing? Okay, so we're going to be jumping into Braille. So just consider Braille, for example. So how is a dot a letter? So just the same thing. How does a print B become meaningful to a child? So we're going to just do a little deep dive into exploring some applications with blind and visually impaired. And so I just want to begin this and taking you into this realm of Braille by saying, who knows some sign language? So Kelly does. And I bet most of you who are in the audience have been involved with some sign language. I certainly have throughout my career, certainly with students who are deafblind, but even beyond that, we use a lot of sign language. It's common to use with all children as they're learning language. And so I want you to take that association of knowing a little bit about sign language maybe and say, so let's all learn a little bit about Braille. And then that will, if you're a team member on a child who's blind or visually impaired, having this beginning knowledge about Braille, I think will help you with your collaboration and ideas and brainstorming, and then a little bit about touch thinking. So simply, and this PowerPoint will be a great reference for you in the future. So that's why I created these few slides around Braille. So a Braille cell is a 6-dot symbol of 1 to 6 raised dots. So you see how there's 2 columns, and we call it dot 1, dot 2, dot 3, and dot 4, dot 5, dot 6. Then, for example, the letter A is dot 1. So in this slide, you see a Braille letter A. Now, this is designed for sighted people to learn the concepts. And here is a reference sheet for you for the Braille alphabet. And so you can see all the letters from A through Z. And this is a good reference for you. Now, a little bit about touch thinking. So a critical condition that I think is important for everybody to understand about learning Braille is about the Braille size. So a typical Braille cell, the symbol needs to fit under the finger pad. So you see a photo here of a finger pad, and the Braille cell needs to fit under that for that touch thinking connection about the Braille shape and what it looks like, so your brain can learn to think about what's under a fingertip. So a little bit about touch thinking. Atypical Braille representations can become thinking about language. It can become number thinking, and it can become complicated by extra steps in learning. And I will show you some examples in the next slide, but this can affect our children with neurodevelopmental differences. So we may think we're making learning easier, but in reality, we can be complicating their learning if we do not use typical Braille representations.
And this is a really important concept for those of us that do not have, we're not a teacher of the visually impaired. We don't have that in our background. We approach Braille often as a sighted person first. So we think about, it's about, visualizing where the dots are. And so I think this next set of examples and how Donna points out some of the difficulties that we might be challenging our students with by approaching things from a visual perspective rather than the touch thinking perspective.
Thanks, Kelly. So for example, there's a photo of Legos and Braille Legos. And you can see if you put your fingertip on it, that's not a typical Braille cell. It's larger. And so the touch thinking part of that is different than if it was a typical Braille cell. And then if you move over to the right, there's a photo of the Braille, some of the letters in the Braille alphabet. And that's for sighted kids. That would be if I had a student in a class who was learning Braille and I wanted peers to understand Braille concepts, I might use something like that. But I would not use that with the person who needed to learn Braille through touch. And I just want to make the association and why some people use these larger representations or atypical representations. When we think about print for beginning readers and emergent readers and young children, we take print, let's say a typical 12-point print size, and we make it big. And we use big print to teach kids, sighted kids when they're young. But that analogy doesn't work with Braille. So then there's another example of a representation of buttons. So that would be like dot 1, dot 2, dot 3, and dot 5 that are raised. But that to a child who needs to learn Braille by touch, that would be like a number concept rather than a touch thinking concept under the finger. And then you see the tennis balls in a muffin tin. That's a common thing you might see. And that's for sighted kids. That's for sighted people to manipulate and learn Braille. So I just have this term Pinterest caution, because if you look at things on Pinterest, you're going to see what Kelly and I call craft Braille. And so just want to encourage you to use typical Braille.
That would be the word craft, C-R-A-F-T.
So just in exploring some tactile graphics and images that you can use with many students, you have a photo with, it's in a Braille book, but you have a tactile representation that's kind of a manipulative that kids love to do. This is like putting in and out some beginning concepts. And so that's an add-on that's fun to add to any kind of book, any kind of tactile manipulative. And then you have the 3D printing items, and there are many kids now who benefit from being able to touch things close up that are concepts that are hard to realize in another way. And then in the next photo are just a lot of tactile Velcro shapes and items. There's so much stuff like that that's helpful for all kids to make things tactile. I love Velcro stuff. I want you to know, when I was a beginning teacher, we did not have Velcro. So
Felt.
Yeah,
we did a lot of felt stuff.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of teaching with Velcro. And then you just, in the bottom, you have a tactile image. And it's just beneficial to bring in tactile images, especially for kids who are visually impaired, who are going to be using their tactile sense early on.
And there's also evidence that for students with dyslexia, students with learning disabilities, having 3D representations of words, of things like maps, geography, science concepts, and we'll look at a couple of slides at some other examples of that. But that's a bringing in that haptic learning of vision plus auditory plus tactual. All those things help some individuals in that learning channel.
So just a little bit about Braille writing, just so you have a reference. There are a variety of tools for writing and engaging with Braille. So the first tool is called the Braille Buzz. That's from the American Printing House for the Blind. Then you have the Perkins Classic Brailler. That's a really, really common tool used. And then it's a manual Braille writing tool. And then there are some electronic tools. You have a tool called the Mountbatten Brailler Tutor, and that's electronic. And then you have the Perkins Smart Brailler, which incorporates some electronics. So just so you have awareness of what Braille writing tools look like. And then there's a whole way of engaging with Braille, both for reading and writing, that we call refreshable Braille or electronic Braille. And there's 3 tools at the bottom of the screen. One is the Mantis, one is the Chameleon, and one is the Braille Trail. Those are all tools from the American Printing House for the Blind. And you see there's a line of plastic pins that are in Braille cells, and these are typical Braille cells. So it really encourages touch thinking. And so you have a concept of refreshable Braille. And it's important for students, if they're going to be reading and writing in Braille, that they have experiences with all kinds of tools. So you see a student at a young age exploring a QWERTY keyboard that has refreshable Braille on it. So he's developing that concept.
And Donna, people may notice that on these refreshable Braille displays, it is an 8-dot pattern rather than the 6-dot.
Right. So that and other places in the world, Braille cells incorporate some 8 dot configurations, and we don't do that in the United States.
So in the US, in the 8 cells, do they represent things like numbers and capital letters electronically?
Yeah, we all do the 6-dot cell for everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, we've talked about the concept of touch thinking as it applies to literacy and Braille and those materials, but also expand your thinking for those of us that mostly we've been using tactile as tangible representations for augmentative and alternative communication vocabulary. This might be a whole new area for you. So other ways that people use tactile markers, in the upper right is a tactile map. So that is a printed map that's got Braille on the various buildings. You'll see the second picture down on the right is using some textures to represent maybe a particular country that you're studying. There's also another way in which we use tactile markers or guides, and it's this idea of orienting somebody to the tool that they're using. So you might find on traditional keyboards, there may be some raised dots on some of your letters where certain finger positions go. On the keypad, there might be a raised plastic nub essentially on the middle of that numeric keypad. On some communication device manufacturers are looking at adding this to their displays. So for example, with the team that worked on the high contrast version of LAMP Words for Life, in the lower right hand corner, the key guard has 8 of the keyholes have a raised outline around them so that somebody could feel across and orient themselves to which symbol, where they're at on the display. All of the symbols have a spacer down to that symbol on the screen. but those 8 places have that raised area so you can figure out where you are on the display. So let's talk about some more communication applications. Some of the systems that are more universal, and some systems are very individualized. So we know that people will use tactile sign language. That is a universal system that might have some words, just like sign language in general, might have some words that are custom to the communicator. We might see, as in the lower left-hand corner, where somebody's using miniatures or parts to a whole on top of a communication display. There's a communicator from Enabling Devices that this young man is using that also lights up. So it has both a visual enhancement as well as the tactile. And then you'll also see some examples here that we're going to be showing you that give you some more representation of parts of speech based upon the shape that the tactile is on. And then also some of the use of bringing Braille forward into our AAC systems. So just some more examples here of tactile supports for expressive communication, whether that is for expressive verbal communication or expressive written communication that people need to be using. You have to think about both of those areas and whether there's going to be sound representation as well as a visual. Is it all going to be tactual? So those are those considerations that you see on the feature match chart. There is a project, and we'd shown you a slide earlier that had some of the images. From the left on this slide is Project Core. And so Project Core has their universal core symbol vocabularies. And this is, I think, a nice example of using 3D printing. There's some videos that are out there about it. We've got links in the handout to these various tools. In the lower right-hand corner, starting to become more popular is the Volkswitch Bliss. So taking the symbols from Bliss Symbolics and then creating a tag on a symbol. So the shape, the color represents the parts of speech, represents, the type of symbol it is. And then hard to tell in this image, there's also Braille on the side. That does fit within the Braille touch thinking process. Well known in the area of using tactile representations for communication is the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And for many years, and this is how I first became introduced to using symbols with multi-levels of representation, where the shape of the symbol represents whether it's, for example, we have 3 symbols at the bottom. The square shape represents place, the triangle shape represents action, and the oval shape represents a thing, an object, an item. The texture also helps represent whether it is a place, an action, or an item. And then the tactile image on top of those give you that final component of what word it is. So for example, if I were to take the symbol in the middle, that is a triangular shape on texture that's kind of like indoor-outdoor carpeting. And then there's a crayon on top of it. Action word is that we're going to do some art, right? So we're gonna be in art. If I were to take that same crayon and put it on the square shape, that would be the place. So that might be art class. It might be museum, right? It might be where I go to create my art. If I took that same crayon and I put it on the oval shape, then it would represent crayon. So I want a crayon. So they've got some nice examples. We've given you a link to their 300-word vocabulary system, and you'll see some of those come up in other images. Also, along those same lines of the color, the shape, the object that's on top of the item are represented in less make it your own. So being able to purchase some of these items have been created, and we've given you the links to these products where you can look at the Tactile Connections product or the Stacks product, that they both take a different perspective of how are you using symbols to represent words. Donna, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's just a great explanation and introduction to how the organization of using tactile materials and getting to meaning is achieved. Yeah, no, great.
There's also some other products out there in the AAC world. Companies like Adaptivation and Logan Tech have kind of come tactily forward by having cards available, their tangible symbol communication sets, pairing those with voice output, and also looking at putting sound tags so that maybe it's a movable symbol that can be interactive with their technology. So growing libraries that you'll see from Adaptivation, and then Logan Tech taking those and adding the electronic speech output to them. There's also a nice article from Lori Dahlquist, who's a speech language pathologist who works with Adaptivation, about her use of tangible symbols, expressive communicatively. Attainment Company has been working with specialists in the area of vision at looking at using their Tactile Talk guidebook in creating tactile displays that go on top of an iPad. So Attainment's very well known for their Go Talk physical products, but that we put symbols on, tactile symbols on top of, but also their Go Talk Now AAC app. And this product adds that display. So you'll see some of the displays have almost like a puffy paint on top of them. Some have parts to whole, like the portion of the spoon. Some have items, and they give you a good representation of how you might use this for songs. You might use it for learning math concepts. You might use it for using words around. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, another one of the universal uses of tactiles that we forget to put into this area is hand-in-hand sign. And we've given you some nice links to videos to look at sign language that's done in hand, finger spelling, and what's often referred to as Protactile American Sign Language, or ASL. And then our third area, although it's hard for us just to talk about understanding and exploring without talking about using it, is digging deeper into the use of tactiles. So some of that in the area of use is, how do you organize all this stuff? Like if you're going to have all these backgrounds and you're going to have all these items. So here's a nice example from one of Donna's colleagues, I believe, and how they organized their tactile closet with materials for creating things, cards that were already created that they could grab and go. And I think you have to really be planful about this, because you can have hundreds of symbols this way. So figure out where they're going to be, how are they portable for individuals is a really important component. We've seen some great use of, great example that Donna and I've seen is from assistive technology specialist Judy Owens and Gerald Abner, that I believe that they're still working in the Central Kentucky Cooperative, but they created these literacy buckets, or buckets of literacy. And in the 5-gallon paint bucket is a book And they started out with kind of those books that were interested and very interesting to the 4-year-old kindergarten and the 5-year-old kindergarten programs. And they found different tactiles to go along with it. They even pulled apart Beanie Babies to put over adapted mice and used tactiles to represent storytelling and story concepts. They also had Braille materials and with that concept of words and images in Braille.
Kelly, I just want to say, I think that's a great example of collaboration and creating access for all kids using all learning channels. It just is, I just love this stuff that they did. So one of the things with it's just all about getting started. How do you get started? And you know, you're sitting in a team meeting, and all the educators and parents and team members, they're saying, yeah, let's do more with tactiles or tangible symbols or sign language. Let's do more around communication. And they say, yeah, let's do it. And then you leave the meeting and everybody goes in their separate ways. And this stuff is time intensive because you got to research it and create it and come to consensus about what is the item you're going to use to get to meaning for the child. So I just have an example of a tool that I've used with teams to get them started so that it's not a month between saying, yeah, let's use tactile symbols and let's use some sign language. And then it's a month before you get started. So I just say let's target 5 to 10 key ideas. You want to start with communication, and then this particular chart has tangible symbols, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, and then I insert what it is we're going to do, a photo, or we create it. And then in this particular case, we were using some manual sign language and some coactive signing. And you could add columns for whatever kind of communication and tactiles you want to use and create. But it gets everybody on the same page. Everybody knows what you're going to be using, and then you can create the materials that all service providers can use. So then another part of getting started, once you decide what you're going to use and do, it's training and coaching and getting the team to do it, because you get to meaning through frequency and use. So strategize the use across all service providers. How, if you're the person who's really promoting the use of tactile items, how are you going to get everybody using the tactile items? And this just is a photo of some braillists that I know from back in the day. And they just were showing all the materials that they use as braillists to create tactile graphics, tactile items for all kids. And they work with their teachers to make decisions about what they're going to make tactiles. So I always like to promote the use of paraprofessionals in supporting the using of tactile items. And I have a tendency to use paraprofessionals and call them access assistants, because they're helping and supporting that use and that access. Oh, do you hear me?
No.
Yeah?
Now,
No?
now we can.
Now? Okay. And what I was saying is worked with a team, and we got together as a group, kind of had a party of creating the tactile material. So it was a parent, it was a speech clinician, it was me. I added the braille onto, we were creating symbols. So it was a fun way to get it done in a night. So some effective teaching strategies in here are 10 to think about. And we could do a whole session on these 10, but I'm just going to list them for you so you can think about this in your own instruction. So think about your communication, both verbal and nonverbal, in the use of tactile materials and how you can support that. Think about creating automaticity, using that frequency so that the use of tactile materials becomes automatic for the student. Think about the role of familiarity in creating routines and procedures. We know those are so important for so many learners. And in this photo, you see a young girl who's blind with a tutor, and they're using all these tools of automaticity, frequency, familiarity, routines, procedures, and predictability to develop her ability to discriminate tactile items and getting ready for Braille. I believe in using incentives with kids to promote success when you're teaching them. If you have to step back to get to success, then do that. And then ultimately, we want independence in the use of the materials. Can you hear me, Kelly?
Right now, yes. You're dropping
Okay.
out.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. Just a word on manual guidance. Consider, working with students from a variety of positions. Sometimes I like to work from behind the student. Use gentle guidance when you're working with a student. Think about hand under hand so that the student's hand is on top of your hands, and seeing how you touch materials and use materials manually. And there again, if you go to hand over hand, there's some gentle guidance around that, and Kelly's going to talk a little bit about that in the next slide.
So yes, there is more and more discussion about the cautions of using hand over hand and doing full modeling. And we've given you a link there from Jane Farrell. She's an AAC specialist in Australia that's written about this. You can also find information off of Kate Ahern's website, and that information from research is also listed on this slide. But really, the cautions around hand over hand is that people rarely fade hand over hand. But it means that we are taking control over somebody else. And there are concerns about that because research has shown that passive modeling of a task is actually more effective in teaching it than hand over hand is. So by us modeling it is more effective than doing hand over hand. And I think some people just automatically go to hand over hand because they think that that's the most effective. But we're seeing in research that that's not the most effective. Some of the big cautions about hand over hand are about being so close to a student. It's hard for us to know whether the message comes from the student or whether the message comes from the person who has their hands on them, especially as it relates to augmentative and alternative communication. The other concerns are about body autonomy and that idea that by physically manipulating someone, you are sending them the message that you have the right to manipulate their body and to touch them and make them do things whether they want to or not. It sends a message that we have the right to make them do things just because we want them to do it. And it doesn't give them messages of protection of self. So it also it gives them that message if they don't want to do it, we're still going to make them do it. So it's very, I said, with great caution that we talk about hand over hand. And if this is a situation that you are in, please read some of these additional links about that concern. I know too that
Thanks,
we are running
Kelly.
over the typical hour, but because this is a pre-conference, we have a little bit more leeway and we're running into some technical difficulties. So we're going to just keep going.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. So the other thing about use is just think about creating opportunities. So you create opportunities for learning through frequency and variety. The more opportunities you create, the greater the chance for that automaticity, for that learning using any tactile supports you're using. Think about explicit instruction. I like to think about playful instruction and a holistic approach. So you just see in this photo, kind of all those things put together for this young boy who's going to be using Braille and a Braille.
All right, Donna, you've dropped out again.
Being playful with tactile materials. And oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Kelly, just you go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, I think some of the other things.
Oh,
that
you
we
can
want
hear
to
me
look-
now?
Yes. All right, I'm gonna go ahead because I think that Donna's not noticing whether.
Okay, so just this.
All right, Donna, we are not hearing you, so I'm going to continue, and then hopefully Donna can drop back in. She might need to quit out and come back in. So one of the other things that we can look at exploring the use of tactiles is with multimedia. So Donna and I are very big users of everything that's around. So some people still have language masters, as you might see on the left-hand side, and that you can add Braille or tactile graphics to that and run the language master card through so somebody can hear it. You can attach various things like game controllers. We can look at children being a part of printing their own tactile graphics and using those kinds of materials. Certainly the whole world of 3D printing. And I think another good example of one of the mobile kits that colleagues of Donna's has created down in the lower right-hand corner, being able to kind of a tactile kit on wheels. This is the last video that we have in the group, and this example comes from the same child that you saw earlier with the tangible book and the refreshable book, now boosting literacy skills by adding a Braille line to the image, so to the tactile image, adding a Braille line, and then adding an auditory output from one of the really simple auditory output as a dot reader. So we'll play a little bit of this and see if we can get Donna back in with us.
Can you see me?
No.
Remember, it's over here.
It's actually in there.
Yep, it's right there. Hello. And then we need to pick on a story. What do you want to read about?
So,
Do you want to read dinosaurs?
yeah,
If you want to read dinosaurs, we need the big book. Big book, are we going to read dinosaurs?
yeah, I figured that out.
I'm going to take a dot off. Okay, I need you to put it in the book. Where do you want it? Where do you want it? In the corner, remember?
Yep. Right up here.
Right up there. Very good. Can you take another dot off? And then turn the page so you can put it in the book.
Okay. Up here. Mom, up here.
Yep.
Okay.
Turn the page so you can put another dot in the book.
Okay. I've got another one. Up here.
Yep. Okay. Well, we got another one, so we're gonna put that one on with the last page too. We're gonna put it over. Should we put them together, or should we put them on separate pages?
Separate pages.
Okay, we'll put it up here. Right there, okay? Now we gotta get the dinosaurs out of their pack. The dinosaurs are here. Sit them out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me have one flow.
Okay, now we need, start from the beginning.
This one.
And this one is, well, this is the Stegosaurus. We need to find which one the Stegosaurus is. Here, put the Stegosaurus in here. Like that. Okay, let's turn the page. Oh, actually, let's put the words in too. Mama will do that. Because I'm not quite sure what they are yet. Okay, and then Triceratops. Where's the Triceratops? Triceratops. And then Diplodocus. Right there. And then, okay, turn your pen on.
I just did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, later. Later. All right, are we gonna read?
Yep, I will do this one.
I lived in forth and flung and went very slowly. I ate meat and families, shake mouth, and drank from streams. I had a round head and a thick body with triangular-shaped plates on my back and spikes on my tail that I used for protection from other dinosaurs.
Another dart.
What kind of dinosaur is this? Should we read it? Let's read it. S is for Stegosaurus. Is that a Stegosaurus? Yeah. Okay, turn the page to it.
Yeah, I did.
I live in a herd with others like me.
We'll see if we've got Donna back here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay. So this is just another example of using that multimedia approach to emergent literacy skills, book concepts, language, you know, all kinds of good things for developing emergent literacy skills. And I just like to customize rubrics. And here's just a basic rubric I use for many, many things that you can see if it makes good sense for you. You know, I put, you know, I like to do 5 skills because if you want to do percentages, you can break 5 skills into percentages. The dates across, I collect information. And I do manual prompts and verbal prompts, and I keep record of all the prompting, because sometimes people don't realize how much they're prompting and how much the students' response is based on prompting. And then I have a key performance rubric at the beginning. So at the bottom. So if you just want to use this as a guide and thinking about how to develop your own rubrics, I think it's one of the best ways, because we don't have great tools for measuring performance using tactile materials like we've been talking about. So
One of
that's
the
just, go ahead, Cal.
sorry, Donna. One
No.
of the tools that's out there for measuring expressive communication using tactiles is I want to remind people about the communication matrix. which is free to use up until once you go past 6 assessments in a year. But one of the things about it is that level 5 looks at the use of what they call concrete symbols. So you'll see those representations in the questions at the whether it's about how they're using tactile symbols to refuse, how they're using tactile symbols to obtain, to be social, and to give and get information. So that might be a reference for you to to remember if this is something that you're familiar with, to make sure you're making use of it. If you're unfamiliar with it, there are some YouTube videos that teach you how to use the communication matrix and how to evaluate the information from it. So we've come a long way. And as what we've been talking about, so the takeaways that we want to make sure that you are bringing all of this information together is that this is an underused medium. You might be using it expressively, you might be using it in literacy and not in another area. So think about the various utilities of tactiles that we've mentioned here. Remember that the information, and please share this information with all team members. This isn't just for your team member who might be a teacher of the visually impaired. It might not just be for somebody that's doing AAC with tangibles, but for all people. You see the videos that we're using are from family members and how they're using, and many of the pictures are pictures from homes. Remember that there are ways of getting started. You don't have to be at perfection. You can get started in small ways. And that this is about blending our collective knowledge and experiences with your AT people, your AAC people, and your people that work with students who are, or individuals who have vision impairment. Donna, any other things you want to add here?
No, I think we've covered a lot of content. I apologize for my tech issues, but so be it. Thank you, Kelly. And thanks, Katie, for facilitating us today.
Our last 2 slides give you